Good morning, good afternoon, kind of depending on what part of the country we are in today. Thank you for joining us today on learning about what's new at CTC Software. For those that don't know me, my name is Chris Cole, and I am the Executive Vice President of Sales and Operations over at ATG. I just wanted to welcome you in today, and for many of you guys, you would have seen this presentation in March at what was originally scheduled for Midwest University. Obviously, with the craziness going on in the world, we thought it was best to push that back a little bit, which that new date, just as a reminder, will be August 26th and 27th. So we look forward to seeing everybody in Minnesota for the 26th and 27th at Mystic Lake Casino and celebrate the 10 years of this fantastic event. Today, Brian and Shawn are going to walk us through again what you guys would have heard on the main stage and the keynote presentation about what these guys have been working on. I'm excited to see it. I've had several conversations with some of these guys, and there's some exciting enhancements coming out. So with that, I want to thank you for your time today. I hope everybody's staying safe and look forward to hanging out with everybody and catching up in August in Minnesota. So with that, Shawn and Brian, look forward to the presentation.
Chris, thank you very much. So Brian and I wanted to share with you guys some information about what's going on here at CTC. This is, again, as Chris mentioned, what we would normally be presenting at the Midwest U main stage. And we'll do a slightly variant version of this at the real Midwest U when that happens, because we'll have released some of the stuff we're going to be presenting to you today. But with that, let me just kind of introduce you to what it is we're going to talk about, to what's new here at CTC. We're going to talk a little bit about CTC's growth. We're going to talk about some new solutions in the civil and building industries. And then at the very end, we're going to open this up for some Q&A because we expect a number of you will have some questions. Feel free to get those questions ready to go in the questions window. We won't answer them in line, but we will be answering them at the end, kind of all together. That way the presentation happens as one fluid thing. So let's first talk a little bit about the company growth at CTC this last year, since the last Midwest University. CTC has grown 50% in our team size. We've added a ton new developers here at the company. We've got some new capabilities at play, just like the year before. We're constantly growing. And because of that, this last year, we've released 10 brand new tools. And we'll talk a little bit about what those are in case you were unaware of the new tools that got released. We also expanded functionality across the entire portfolio. All of our tools have new features, both building side and civil side. Brian, on your side, I know how many tools have you added in the civil suites?
The civil suites doubled this past year.
Doubled.
So we've seen a huge increase in the functionality. We released an entirely new suite and added a lot to the Sim project suite.
That is fantastic. And a little bit of secret news here. We can't tell you exactly who this is, but one of the Fortune 500 companies actually is using HIVE exclusively for their content management. We did a very custom implementation of HIVE for them, but they are based directly on HIVE and using that 100% throughout their entire organization. It's pretty amazing for us to have them as one of our users of HIVE. And sadly, we don't have permission to release their name, but just let you guys know, this isn't a startup tool. One of our major tools that CTC offers, HIVE, is being used in large companies as well as small. So let's talk about some of those new solutions that we had this year. Brian, you mentioned you doubled your product line. Tell me about the civil side.
Yeah, we did. We nearly doubled the functionality in the Sim project suite with the release of Data Wizard, point file converter, sheet generator, and then some big enhancements to Pipe Designer. And then we released an entirely new suite towards the beginning of the year of 2019. And it's for all the CAD manager types out there, managing templates and styles and that's gotten a lot of good attention, actually, a lot of interest on it. And it helps people manage those templates, their styles, line types, layers, you name it. It's a very time-consuming thing. And it dovetails really nicely with the BIM Manager suite that we have on the Revit side. So that was kind of some of the inspiration for that. And then also just my own experience of and pain and suffering and working in Civil 3D for 15 years and trying to manage those templates. So, and what about on the building side, Shawn?
Yeah, well, I think what you guys are going to see upcoming is a lot of convergence of our tools. As Brian mentioned, he's taking some samples of things from our BIM Manager suite, and obviously you'll be seeing that happening more. And we'll actually talk about some of that here in a little while as well. But yeah, this last year we massively updated the data suite to increase its speed and the amount of data that it was able to go after. That was a huge update for us. We know that some of you experienced a couple of growing pains there. That's just the way it goes when you have a massive database collecting tons and tons of data and it's owned by you. We're working on ways of making that better as well. The project suite itself, we added back in the length calculator, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that a little later on. But that was added back in by popular demand. On the manager suite, we added the family preview manager, and I'll be covering that a little bit more in depth as well so you can be aware of what it does. But that was added to the manager suite as a free tool. That's fantastic for those of you who are wanting to leverage that. The batch suite, a new tool was the project processor to help you BIM managers batch process through a series of projects and upkeep them. Take a look at that. And then last year at Midwest U on the main stage, we announced HIVE, and we continued to improve upon that. But last year, the project analytics was released in beta, and we also increased HIVE's performance overall, how it functioned. Now, we have some upcoming stuff here, and I'm going to talk first about the upcoming releases a little bit. HIVE itself is releasing the project analytics as a full release, no longer in beta. We're also adding content analytics, and we have a new UI that we're going to be showing you today. So stay tuned for that. That'll be coming up here in a little bit. Brian, on your side, I know you've got some stuff that's upcoming as well.
We do. We've got a lot of stuff in development, and coming out soon is a tool called Label Genie, another one called AutoGrader. These are going to be added to the Sim project suite. So these are for everyday production use. And they're, I think, what are going to be the biggest, best tools we've made for Civil 3D users. And then we also have our 2021 upgrades. So with that, I think I'll dive in a little bit more deeply and talk about some of these new products coming out. I want you guys to see what this stuff does, see it in action a little bit. The first one is Label Genie. I mentioned that, and this is about automatic labeling. This is something that we spend hours, days, weeks on in our projects. And it's really just this thing that we factor into our projects, right? Right, like we just got weeks and weeks, all this time annotating. It's not design really, right? It's just labeling things, and it's an incredibly tedious task. And so what we're gonna be doing with this is we're gonna be automating 85% of the labeling you do across your projects. That's a huge ask, I know it is, but it's gonna be really cool. This works on Civil 3D and on AutoCAD labels, right? So we're talking surface spot elevation labels, all the way to M-text, to pipe network labels, you name it. Now, some of those areas, you might think, well, that's kind of automated already, Brian, right? Think about adding your pipe network labels to all your structures at once. That's the one little place in Civil 3D where you have some automation on this. Otherwise, it's just kind of one click at a time, right? So imagine that across all the other labeling scenarios you might do in AutoCAD and Civil 3D. And then imagine being able to do it across multiple drawings at once, okay? So take a simple little sample like this where you've got M liters, you've got dimensions, you've got surface labels, you've got all these little callouts, line and curve labels, you name it. All this stuff, we're talking about automating it. And we say 85%, not 100%, because why, right? You place this stuff in, and then you want to tweak things here and there, right? There's some detail, right? But what if we could automate 85% of that? So here's a little screenshot of the UI, and then I'm going to show you in action in a bit here. But we get to choose our drawing sources. We get to have detailed selection on what layouts we label within those drawings. We choose what type of labels and anchor objects we want, and then we have detailed control on the fields or the data showing up within those labels. In the case of mText, right, we can pull in AutoCAD fields automatically. In case of something like a line and curve label, well, that's just based on, you know, your Civil 3D style. And then down here, we've got detailed control on the formatting itself. Let me show you what this looks like. Let's take an example of a bunch of lots, okay? And we need to label all of these lots at once. Line and curve labels, it's a common thing, right? And we're picking these one at a time, one lot at a time. Now there are the parcel tools in Civil 3D, but a lot of people don't use them because they leave a lot to be desired. But what they do for us is they help with some labeling. Now we can do this across any kind of line segment. I'm going to choose polylines in this case. We're going to label the segments. Now I've got 3 drawings open here, and I've got multiple layouts in each. And I've selected all these drawings, and then I'm going to choose my styles, and I choose add labels. Now watch this. It comes in to every layout in this drawing, and then also I've got 2 other drawings set up. We just added thousands of line and curve labels at once across multiple drawings. Okay, the time savings are huge on this stuff. Now Label Genie does over 100 different label scenarios. I've only got time to show you a couple here, but let's take something like mText on those same polylines. What if I want to place mText at the centroid of all of this stuff? It could be on hatches, it could be on feature lines, it could be on anything. Again, I've got style formatting down below here, choosing my text type, these kinds of things. And I also spelled out what component is going to label in that mText. Okay? I can push all those labels again at once, all of these. Now I'm starting with something simple here like polylines because this is the area that's really, really tedious in Civil 3D, right? We get some automation here and there, like I said, in pipe networks. Take something like this on a road project where we just need a bunch of callouts on, let's take these retaining walls. I just want to insert leaders across all this stuff. Okay, again, normally I'm picking and picking on all this stuff. I can spell out some custom text, choose my M leader style, some offset options, rotation options, and boom, it inserts across the whole drawing. Again, we talk about that 85% because you're going to want to come in here and tweak things a little bit. But I can spell out a label type, an anchor object. I can filter by layer, all these different controls on it, and automate that, okay? I could spend all day here showing you scenarios on this. Like I said, there's over 100 label scenarios. You want to attach surface spot elevation labels to feature lines based on a certain surface, we can do that, okay? Everything is there. So that tedious pick and click that you're used to, don't have to do that anymore. Let's talk about site grading in Civil 3D. A huge pain point in Civil 3D. Let's think about some of the tool sets in Civil 3D. You've got pipe networks. Those are dedicated tool sets for storm and sanitary design, right? And we've got corridors, which are great for road design and anything else linear, be it airport or rail or any number of things, right? But site grading is really clumsy. And when I say site grading, I'm talking about grading out parking lots and ponds and residential lots, this kind of stuff. What are we stuck with? Feature lines, which are nice and stable, but they're really tedious. One at a time, you have to update vertices on all of these. And then we've got grading tools, which are nice in theory, but they're really buggy and they just, well, they don't really work, right? Anyone who's tried it knows that. And then some people use corridors for site grading, but for the average user, it's way too complex and way too confusing to use corridors. With AutoGrader, we're looking to solve this here. Take a simple site like this, where I've got a parking lot, I've got a pond, I've got some grading around a building, okay? We're gonna be able to automate this grading by linking feature line sets. Now you have to lay out some kind of base design for your project, right? But say you draw on your gutter lines for your curb, you're then gonna be able to spell out what we call grading families in AutoGrader, where you spell out these different parameters, offsetting to the left or the right, and the distance and the slopes, and AutoGrader even gives you a preview of what that template looks like, okay? You're gonna be able to execute on these grading families on any number of feature lines. And it's not just a creation tool, it's an updating tool as well. So as those designs change, you can refresh those families and everything will update. And better yet, think about your surface. That's what you're after, right? That's the end product of your grading. It's going to automatically add all this stuff and manage all the stuff inside your surfaces as well. Let's take a look at it. Here is that same site, and I've got some primary feature lines drawn for my curb, my pond, okay? But now what would I be stuck doing? Doing all these stepped offsets, right? And then as soon as things change, it's really tedious. So I'm gonna go in here and create what's called a parallel grading family, where it automates 3D offsetting of feature lines for us. I'm gonna define a top of curb, and as I do this, the preview updates down below. This is really cool. It's really intuitive on how you spell this out. Okay, the top of curb, that'll be linked to the parent feature line. That's the red feature lines we see for curb there. And then I can spell out the back of curb. Okay, just like we have for subassemblies and corridors, right? We can spell those parameters out here, but we can now save them in a grading family, and we can execute on them on any project, on any set of feature lines. I'm going to choose a layer so that it grabs all the feature lines on that particular layer. I've got formatting options so I can control what styles and layers are assigned to these feature lines. And then finally, what surface will all these feature lines be added to? And I've got break line settings, both supplementing factors and weeding factors, okay? And then I'm going to click run on this, and you're going to see on the left here, my entire parking lot graded out based on those parameters. Dozens and dozens of feature lines. Normally I'm creating those one at a time. And here's the thing, I kind of did this on purpose. We made the curve backwards, right? When you're automating something like this, it can be easy to choose left or right, the wrong side. I simply go in here and I switch everything. I run it again, and I'll watch all of those green feature lines, the automated ones, they all update automatically across the entire parking lot. And everything gets added to the surface as well. Now these kinds of things you repeat from one project to the next. So I can load templates that I've created from previous projects where I've got, in this case, all my benches and slopes defined for my pond. I simply run that template. I can edit it if I want, and then it executes on that pond feature line. Think about other scenarios, grading around buildings, simple daylight grading. I can load those templates. Those are external template files. They're text-based, they're JSON files. They're really easy to work with. But you can load them right into here. And I'm going to run all of these families at once. So this is what it'll look like in your project. You'll have multiple grading families for different parts of your site. And we even do surface daylighting. See how it's daylighting from the blue feature line to our existing ground surface. And everything is in here is dynamic. If I make a simple change like the positioning of the pond, I move that parent or that primary feature line, and then I come in here and I run the pond grading family again. Now watch what happens. The entire pond updates. I did that in seconds. That would have been 20 minutes of work, right? And we're doing that over and over. Let's take a different scenario, grading out a subdivision. Instead of parallel offsetting, we can do perpendicular creation like side lot lines. And I'm going to do this outside lot just as an example here. And what I want to do is I want to spell out the grading along those side lots. So instead of spelling out the offset parameters, I'm going to spell out the grade breaks along that, that side lot line. This is, again, another really tedious part in Civil 3D, and we're automating all of it here. So I've got the front of the house there where I've got a grade break, the mid of the house, and then the back of the house pad as well. And as I'm doing it, you see it's showing in the preview what this grading will look like. And I've got the back of the lot as well, okay? Now this is a residential scenario. It could be anything. It could be pads along a service road for a wind farm. Okay, anything where you need to automate the generation of feature lines perpendicular. I can tell this to do every 60 feet. I could also pick different locations in the drawing. And then of course I've got that formatting again, style and layer automation. Choose my surface, and now watch how fast this is. Boom, it creates all those lots and grades them accordingly. And again, I wanted to show you, what if you didn't like it? Okay, just go in and change the parameters, run the grading family again, and everything will update. I changed that distance on the lot back, run it again. Okay, that kind of stuff takes hours of work. Here's one of those side lot lines. Here's all those grade breaks I spelled out. You can see the surface model in there. Okay, we can grade out pieces of our site in a matter of minutes instead of hours. So this is the other one I'm really excited about. AutoGrader, it's called. Both of these tools, Label Genie and AutoGrader, are coming out May 4th. And then as well, the 2021 upgrade to all of our projects, the entire SIM project suite and the manager suite, are also coming out May 4th. So guys, I can't tell you, this is the most excited I've been of the products we've put out there. Take something like Label Genie. This is something that addresses every single project we do out there. Let's talk a little bit about the future tools, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shawn after that, and he's going to talk about some of our building solutions. We've got a tool coming out soon called Earthwork Processor. This is about subgrade volume calcs on sites. Pipe Jammer. We're going to be able to take pipe and pressure networks and import and export to and from Excel. Clash Seeker. This is robust clash detection across multiple object types. And then we're also going to be releasing HIVE for Civil 3D. Working on the development of that right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that when Shawn takes over. So let me just show him a little bit more detail. Earthwork Processor, subgrade volume calculations. This is like a parking lot where you've got varying depths from heavy duty pavement to light duty to sidewalks, right? And you need that subgrade surface. We're going to automate the labeling and the hatching on all that. And here's kind of a little mock-up of the interface where we can define all these different areas where, based on a polyline or a feature line, we can grade out these subgrades. We can account for cut and fill factors. We can label, hatch the stuff. We can export it to Excel, bring it into an AutoCAD table, you name it. Pipe Jammer is another one. We're going to be able to take networks and push them out to Excel. Now we've got a number of pipe tools in there already. Pipe Designer is a really robust tool where you get to work right in Civil 3D to design pipe runs in a really intuitive way. But there's reasons where we need to take our entire pipe network for analysis purposes. Maybe you want to bring in a third-party app, you name it. But we're going to be able to have detailed formatting controls. And then also when you import that Excel network back into Civil 3D, it'll update those networks. So here's what this interface will look like. We can choose any number of structures or fittings or parts. What properties do we want to export? And then we have detailed control on the column order and what this will look like. Clash Seeker, another one. Like I said, robust clash detection and reporting. Right now in Civil 3D, there's a simple tool that does clash detection between pipe networks. Super limiting. We're going to find clash detection between feature lines, surfaces, corridors, solids, you name it. A really robust tool to find those clashes or those proximity violations, right? If two objects are closer than they need to be. You're going to be able to annotate and table all this stuff. Again, a really cool tool. So I know a number of questions came in. We're going to hold those to the end. And before we do that, though, I'm going to turn it over to Shawn, and he's going to talk to you about all the cool stuff we've got coming out for our building industry solutions. Shawn?
Thank you, Brian. Give us 1 second as we switch over the actual presentation here. I need to share my screen with everybody. But yes, we want to talk about the building industry solutions that are coming out of CTC. And before I get into that, I want to talk about what is at the core of CTC. What's really at our heart? And you saw this with the civil side. You're going to see this on the building side as well. CTC's core is the success of our clients. We want you as successful as you can be. We want you as productive as you can be. And in the environment we're all working in right now, one of the things that we're noticing very quickly on both the civil side and the architecture building side is that we all need some way of doing better content management. This is hard. Like, we offer HIVE, that's a solution that we have, and it works really well, but we want to tell you a little bit about why we are so focused on the content management. It's because everybody struggles with this. We're all running into issues where we can't find the right thing, or now that we're all working remotely, we're VPNing into an office and trying to browse across networks and find stuff, loading up projects that way, transferring standards. That all is really, really slow. And so this challenge isn't unusual for us. Now, if you're using HIVE already, then you probably don't have that problem. But if you don't use HIVE yet, I want to show you just real quickly what you're doing right now, just to kind of level the playing field here so you can kind of see what's going on. Standard workflow. You want to load a new piece of content into your project, you use the load family command, you browse around, you try and find it, double clicking into folders, picking something that is probably right by file name only, choosing some kind of types if there's a type catalog to load this into your Revit session. If you needed to grab, say, drafting views or schedules from another project, you're browsing again for a project file, this time using a different command to find that project, then choosing what it is you need, filtering down, browsing through by name, and then grabbing what you need to bring in your project. And let's say you needed to transfer project standards for system families. This is wall types, floor types, ceiling types. You have to first browse to some place on your network, open up the project correctly, hopefully with all work sets in most cases. This is a part that's really time consuming. Then you can go into transfer project standards, make sure you check the right stuff, grab the right category, click OK, and then you have to handle all the duplication that comes in. 3 different commands for loading in content into your project. That's inconvenient. So this is why CTC developed HIVE in the first place, to offer you better browsing of content, really quality user management, permissions management, and we're adding in analytics every day. That's all important because for you as BIM managers, for you as end users, to be able to best find what it is you need, there can't be 3 or 4 different ways of finding it and different processes and different file sizes that are slowing you down overall. And this is not just a problem in the building industry. This is a problem on the civil side as well. There's tons and tons of file types to manage. Now, I know you guys have tool palettes, and we'll talk about this a little later on, but we're going to be looking at how we can get HIVE usable by your teams as well. Now, with the HIVE, I want to show you some things about HIVE, specifically our brand new HIVE, because HIVE this last year underwent massive updates. On the building side at CTC, the vast majority of our development efforts have been in HIVE's interface, both in the content management system and on the website. So we have a brand new CMS, content management system user interface for the end users themselves. I'm going to pull this forward right now. This is the new UI for HIVE. If I go into this environment here, the home page is much more simplified than the previous iteration. This is all based on feedback, and you're going to hear me say this a few times throughout today's discussion. Your feedback is 100% what drives our development efforts at CTC, okay? This HIVE CMS preview, we had a number of companies out there who have given us feedback as to how it needs to look and feel and work. And we're working on still improving upon that, of course, but this is the new iteration of the user interface. I'm logged in as a company admin right now, so I have 2 extra buttons that all users wouldn't necessarily have: access to a management portal and the ability to add content. Otherwise, the browsing interface of this is very much the same. I've put in a search up here for searching for single swing doors. As I pull this up, this search runs, grabs all the content that relates to that, and presents it back to me in a simple interface. Of course, I could double click on this and load it into my active design app very easily. Speaking of which, HIVE in its earlier iteration required that you opened up Hive as an add-in per version of Revit, per instance of Revit. This here understands all of my Revit instances in one step. And so I get to choose which instance of Revit this would be dropping into if I was to load or open this door. So this saves me a ton of time. There's also the need to be able to filter this content down. We've added to the interface the ability to filter this. So this filters pane can open up. You can set your filters. As you click away, those filters can be applied, and it doesn't have to stay intrusive on your interface. Now, if you're like me and you like having the filters stay on screen all of the time, you can pin that out there. So this is designed to work how you work. With this content, as I load it, this would, if I was loading this into Revit, automatically pop up a window to let me know what version it is I'm loading and which types it is I wanted to bring in. I don't have a single instance of content per version of Revit anymore. It's all zipped up into one. There's one single door panel, and that serves, if I was to close my filters and show you the details here, in my case, 17, 18, and 20. I haven't loaded a 19 version of this. But I have the individual family types for each of these, and I can selectively load whichever ones it is I want that's the most relevant. For you BIM managers out there, when you are adding content here, let me go grab a folder of content real quick. Once this File Explorer decides to open, what I want to do is I want to, let's see, we'll go use some out-of-the-box content here. Let's go grab Autodesk Revit's folder. This is all that browsing stuff that end users would normally do that I can pre-do for them. If I wanted to add, say, the Imperial doors into Hive, if I simply drag and drop this onto the Hive interface wherever I am, if I have the ability to add content, it brings me directly to add content and grabs that content, throwing it in here. You'll have the ability as BIM managers to go through and choose exactly how you want this content to look. So I can choose what the visibility settings are, explicit appearance settings, category by category, and even explicitly pulling out what kind of hosting types. So if it's wall hosted, it might appear one way. If it's ceiling hosted, it maybe appears a different way. All of this was based upon, again, the feedback that you all have given us. Finally here, before I jump back into the main PowerPoint there, the content processor itself, when I'm looking at this, I can choose which parameters are actually searchable in Hive. As I fill this out, it instantly takes effect across the board for all users in my company. So instead of them searching every parameter, now Hive is really laser focused on specific parameters, and that really helps to narrow and refine your search results custom to how you work, because everybody wants to work a little differently. So there's a brand new CMS user interface, and we encourage you all, if you want to know more about this, to give us a call. We'd be glad to demonstrate this to you in great detail so you can see more about how this works. There's also a brand new management site to go along with this. I'm logged into Hive right now in that management site. On the Home tab here, which is, this is currently in private beta for a few of our clients that are kind of helping us test this out. Right now, if I wanted to go in here, I can see my user and group management, so I can organize all the users in my firm, the groups in my firm, pull in exactly who's supposed to be a part of those, set rights for those. I have the ability with this to take a look at additional project analytics, right? So the project analytics, first of all, is now fully released, and it's going to be over here in the little dashboard area, so I can start to browse through and understand how my models are actually performing inside of Revit. I could pick a specific project. I could pick any specific models that go along with that project and be able to pull this information and demonstrate to my team like how the performance, how it's opening and saving, what warnings exist in their file sizes, all that kind of information throughout these different reports. But in addition to that, we're adding in content analytics in this release. So when 2021 releases, you'll actually be able to go in here to the CMS side as well and understand how many total libraries and total tags and content and how many people are favoriting things, and what kind of search statistics do we have, and what kind of Revit content is loaded, what are my top 10 families. Tons of features, feature rich here to help you, the BIM managers, understand how Hive is being used in your firm and maybe how you can improve your libraries to make it even more usable for your team. That's the goal, making Hive the core of all of your content searching. Now, as Brian mentioned, I'm going to mention this in a minute here, we are looking at how Hive can actually function really well in the Civil 3D space as well. But more on that in just a minute. First, I want to talk about two other tools in a little bit of depth so that you can understand what was added in addition to HIVE, beyond HIVE, to our suites. In fact, you can go get these today if you wanted to. I mentioned length calculator in an earlier part. We released this just a little while ago. This is a very fresh re-release of the length calculator. This is backed by popular demand. Again, CTC listens to what it is you want. We can't always do it tomorrow, but we try to do it as quickly as we possibly can. Length calculator in this case, we pulled it off the suite because we felt that Revit in 2018 had all the features you needed to achieve the same thing. But those of you in the MEP space, you disagreed strongly. And so we brought this back. It's in the project suite. It is a free tool. And what this effectively allows you to do is figure out the connected lengths of duct, pipework, conduit, and cable tray based on your selections. I do need to be crystal clear about this. There's no confusion. This does not include fittings because Revit does not allow us to include fittings. And this is why we kind of pulled it off the suite in the first place, because some people thought it did fittings. It doesn't. But just so you're aware, this does allow you to tab select a connected run of duct, pipe, conduit, or cable tray, and then it'll tell you the total linear length of the ductwork, piping, conduit, cable tray itself. It saves you from building a Revit schedule and doing all kinds of complex filtering to get the same exact information. This gives it to you in a simple interface. And it's a free tool. So, hey, go use this, try this on your projects, and see if it gives you the information you're looking for. A feature that I mentioned inside of the little HIVE demo there, the ability to control the previews of content, what view orientation they come from, all that kind of stuff, that's the preview manager. The family preview manager is actually a tool that is released also in the BIM manager suite. We're talking a little earlier about how our tools interact. We're going to have civil tools and architectural building tools that interact. In this case, we have different suites that are interacting. That family preview manager, for those of you who maybe don't have HIVE yet or you want to pre-tune your library, if you get Manager Suite today, this is a free tool, by the way, you can use the family preview manager to go in and establish your standards for how family previews are generated. You can choose the visibility settings, the view angles, the display types. You can modify this by category and hosting. Exactly the same features that I mentioned when I was in the HIVE interface. You can do this as a standalone tool from the BIM Manager Suite. You're going to see a lot of our other tools, especially BIM Manager tools, integrating into HIVE in future releases. So speaking of future releases, what future tools does CTC have in the wings for the BIM building side? Well, very specifically, we are working very heavily to get BIM 360 integration to function much better with all of our tools. There's still limitations in the Autodesk API, but that aside, we are still working to get our tools to integrate. This is becoming even more important as many of us are working from home right now. We're noticing that we need those to be updated in our environment. And so we're working toward that for sure. We are also working towards the web hosting of our licensing and our settings to minimize the need for you all to have network license management, to have network hosted settings. We want to put that stuff in the cloud to, again, make the working from home and working remotely environment a whole lot easier than it is right now for many of you. And so while our tools can work really well in this work from home environment, we want to make sure it's even easier. An explicit tool that is on the wings that are about to come out here in the moderately near future is Revit Sheet Generator. You guys have been asking for this for a while. We want to put this into our BIM project suite, the ability to actually live generate sheets, the views on the sheets, and manage those sheets on into the future. So keep your eyes out in the BIM project suite for that tool to be released not too distant future here. And then finally, HIVE for Civil 3D. Brian, I want you to talk a little bit more in depth about HIVE for Civil 3D and how this affects your civil users out there differently than it would affect, say, the building users.
Absolutely, absolutely. So those of us on the infrastructure side, we've heard CTC talk about HIVE for a long time, and we don't know exactly what it is. What is it solving, right? And Shawn's talked a little bit of it but it's content management, right? And that's straightforward enough. But what this means to those of us in the AutoCAD Civil 3D world It's about having a central repository for all of our CAD content. Now, what are we doing now, right? We're putting this stuff on a server, or maybe we sync it to local machines or something like that, right? But it's just a bunch of files sitting on a drive somewhere, right? And what I'm talking about is all of our templates, all of our blocks, subassemblies, pipes, profiles, you name it, all this stuff. In fact, there's almost 40 different file types to make a successful Civil 3D setup run, right? We got you beat on that, Revit users.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, and it gets really complex. And what do we use? If we're really effective with it, we're using tool palettes. And while those are all right, they're really clumsy to set up and maintain, and they're static, right? They're static. You just have to know where to go and find that content. So in HIVE, we're going to be able to search and filter to find that content. Shawn was showing you that in the HIVE interface a little bit. We're going to have analytics to understand the usage of this content. I mean, how many of us have these giant detail libraries and we don't know who's using what, but you don't dare pull anything away, right? To, you know, because someone might be using it, right? So analytics.
20-year-old standard detail, Brian. I need that 20-year-old standard detail. I've
Yeah.
never used it, but I might.
I might need it. Yeah, yeah. So analytics on this stuff is really important from a CAD management standpoint to continually maintain and keep efficient all of that stuff in our CAD library. And then user permission controls. This does a number of things. For one, say I've got a water resources department and then a transportation department and then a residential department. Okay, they don't have all the same content needs. They might have different templates, different block libraries. Okay, so what users can see, you have permission controls on that. What users can edit or what users can provide feedback on, you have permission controls on that. For example, you might have a variety of content out there, be it a bunch of sub-assemblies, maybe you built a bunch of new ones. You would want to get feedback from those teams. All of that can happen right through HIVE, and you can control in detail. By contrast, you wouldn't want someone in there customizing the company's CUI file or something of that nature. And so you've got a lot of control on this. So this is an area where, you know, in all my experience working with Civil 3D over the years, I think people don't even realize how clumsy it is and how much better it could be. In the AutoCAD Civil 3D world, we're given tons of options in the options interface, all these different places where we can change these settings to point to all these different files. But those of you who deal with this, you know what a monster it is to maintain that thing. And then when you have to, you know, move to the next version of Civil 3D as it comes out, or perhaps you open a new department at your company and they need a different set of templates and content, it's just a monster to manage. HIVE is going to change all that in a big, big way. And we have that coming out in the future here, HIVE for Civil 3D.
I want to mention one more thing. I didn't mention this earlier in the webinar, but I think that what you just said, Brian, makes this incredibly relevant. When you're working with other teams, you need to be able to get them your standards. They need to be able to use the same survey templates, or in the case of the building side, the same door types, wall types, schedules, view things. When you're partnering on a project, there's a lot of times you want to share the same libraries, and HIVE actually allows for that. Right now, you can share your libraries with outside firms, and very soon, HIVE will also, as a future feature, be able to have what we call public libraries, where manufacturers or big organizations can broadcast their standards, and you simply subscribe to those standards, and as they're updated, you always have the latest and greatest. No longer do you have to do like this big zip transfer of standards to a firm, or download a big zip of standards and then try to parse through them and understand how they work. Man, HIVE can just have that at your fingertips for the building side and on the civil side. And that's huge. All right. We do want to just remind everybody, this is sort of a quick interim virtual main stage presentation for you that we would normally have presented at Midwest University on the main stage. But we will be there still. Midwest University is still happening. August 26th and 27th is the scheduled dates for this. It's going to still be at the Mystic Lake Casino in Minnesota here. And as a note, you're already registered. If you were registered for Midwest U before, you're already registered. There's nothing you have to do. Now, if you wanted to have, if there's some kind of, scheduling conflict and you need to deregister yourself, simply contact ATG and we'll work with you on that. But the Midwest U is happening as scheduled on August 26th and 27th. All right, as always, we want to thank everybody who's attended here for the time that you've given us. We really appreciate when you show up for any webinars we're putting on live and interact with us. And if you have to take off, we understand, but we are jumping now into a Q&A session, and Brian and I are going to shotgun back and forth answers based on questions that you've already thrown into the questions window. There's a nice queue there already, and if you have questions that you want to ask, throw them in that questions queue and we will get to them in the order received, as they say.
Absolutely. And if there's some we can't get to or maybe are too complex to just answer over the line here, we will certainly reach out to you after the fact.
Yeah.
So let's start at the top of the list there. Shawn, there's a question there about updates to our tools and how do I get those automatically updated, right? The new version of the project suite,
yep.
What have you. This is something we're very aware of. We know that the software world these days, you're used to automatic updates, and we're working on this so that you can get that pushed. Shawn, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, we've actually already implemented that in the HIVE system. The HIVE system today has the ability to trigger and let you know that there's an update. The new HIVE that's coming out May 4th with all of our other tools in 2021 has the ability to trigger an auto update right from the app. And our other tools will be getting that kind of functionality as well. We're working to get that out there. We know that many of you want that notification and in some cases the ability to force an auto update. We also understand that those of you in large organizations do not want your end users being notified of and having the ability to update their software. So we're working that out right now to make that more elegant. But yeah, that is definitely in the forefront of our mind, making sure that you are all up to date on our latest versions. We're proud of our latest versions. We want you to know about them. And we're trying to figure out the best avenue to make that a possibility. Along the lines with that, I want to touch base on that real quick. Down below, there's another question from another of our users who asked if there's a way to more easily download the latest versions of these from our website, rather than having to open Revit, go into the tool and ask for an update. Well, one, we want to make sure that you're notified. But secondly, we also do know that you don't always want to have to open Revit to get it. And so that's a part of what we're considering. Our new licensing management that we're trying to work into our HIVE system, where all of our tools will be licensed out of, we're working on getting the downloadability into that as well when that goes live.
A couple Civil 3D questions on the AutoGrader tool. One was about how does it handle sites? There was a setting in the formatting there where you can choose the site that each set of child feature lines lands in. You can put it into a none site or specify a unique site for all of them, or it can go into the same site as the parent feature lines. And then another follow-up on the AutoGrader one, on feature lines, the automatically created feature lines cross, how does that work? Wouldn't they be messed up? We've got algorithms in there that are gonna sort out that supposed overlapping, and it's gonna kind of self-trim that stuff. Now, is there scenarios that you could dream up where it's not gonna do exactly what you want, of course, right? But we've got that implemented into AutoGrader. And then another one on AutoGrader, what type of objects are created from that? This is an important question, not just with this tool, but for all the CTC products. The question is, are we creating corridors or grading or custom objects? None of the CTC tools create custom or proprietary objects that would render that file, incompatible with, say, another instance of Revit or Civil 3D that doesn't happen to be running our tools or doesn't have the latest version. It's a key part of all the development that we do is that we don't do anything custom to your drawings that would make them not work or not function, on a install of Revit or Civil 3D that doesn't have those tools. So what we're doing in AutoGrader, we're simply automating the duplication and editing of feature lines. Standard objects that are in there, you're all used to them, but now you don't have to manage them one at a time. We can really automate it. And then one other question on one of our existing tools, Pipe Designer. Do we have the ability to set slope across multiple pipes? That's not in there yet. It's coming out real soon. I'm not going to have it for the May 4th release, but I know that's a key thing in one of our most popular tools. We will get that in there as soon as possible.
So I noticed a question on the building side here. The first one is, does HIVE automatically upgrade or update families like Avail does? First of all, I'm pretty sure Avail doesn't auto upgrade. There's another of our competitor tools that does do that. HIVE does not auto upgrade. We have tools that help you with the management of this. And we at CTC believe strongly in intentional BIM management, that you control your content. We do have tools to help automate that on the BIM Manager suite itself. We have a family processor, and on the BIM batch suite, we have a family upgrader tool, both of which are really good for making sure you can maintain your content. There was also a question about, do we have built-in shared parameter file management? And yes, actually we do. That's in the BIM Manager suite as well. Again, intentional BIM management, the ability to maintain your shared parameter file using shared parameter manager, and then implement those changes across the board into all your families and into all of your schedules using other tools in the manager suite. So we strongly encourage you to take a look at that so that you can, again, practice intentional BIM management, maintaining your libraries how you see fit with tools that help you automate that process. Another question on the HIVE front, does HIVE support cloud-hosted content, or is it still pointing to a network location? Well, HIVE actually supports both network location content and cloud content simultaneously. It does that now in the current iteration of HIVE. You can simply enable cloud caching of your content, so it's a choice you make. We don't force you to put your content in the cloud. We don't force you to only have content on your local network. You can basically do both and have the best of both worlds. So HIVE right now does that, and HIVE will continue to do that, where you can cloud host content or not. And the really key part there is, I know some of you have to go through and have certain collections of your content not cloud hosted because of different project types and different governing agencies you work with, where you cannot have certain information on the cloud. We understand that. HIVE actually allows for a hybrid environment where you can have libraries that are not cloud hosted and some libraries that are. So it really is the answer that's the most flexible. It has the ability to do either or both, or only one of them, right? You can do whatever you need to do. There was another question about that project analytic information. Does it get it from a tool that we offer called PAL, Project Activity Logger? And that is actually where the project analytics stuff gets harvested from. That is an optional tool. Again, some of you have projects where you do not want the information hosted or cached anywhere about that project other than on your own system. So you have the flexibility of disabling or not installing the logging for project data. Most of us, though, we probably would benefit from the project data. And so it's an optional module that you can install alongside HIVE, the HIVE CMS called HIVE PAL. And that allows you to then begin logging your information to the PAL cloud environment. Another HIVE question here. Can HIVE review and interpret where families have been loaded within Revit projects? This is to help make sure that people are using the families from HIVE and not local kind of saved locations. The answer is, with a new HIVE, yes, it does. It has the ability to understand when content was dropped into a project. It logs which project model it was dropped into. So if you're noticing a bunch of families that are in a project that weren't registered, to say, hey, I was dropped from HIVE, they obviously didn't come from HIVE. And so you can derive that using the HIVE analytics system in the new HIVE when that comes out on May 4th. There was another question here about the Preview Manager, changing gears a little bit here. Does Preview Manager change the Windows thumbnail, or does it only change how HIVE sees the thumbnail? Basically, does it create a special view in the family? Well, if you're using the HIVE Preview Manager directly in HIVE, It does not change the preview in Windows. It changes it for the purpose of Hive only. However, if you choose to leverage the family preview manager from the BIM manager suite, yes, that one does make a preview view in the family based on your rules and sets its properties and makes that the preview image, because it can't be live processed and then left alone to remember that. It has to actually exist in the family when you're using the add-in from the BIM manager suite. But if you're using it directly from Hive when you process your content, nothing is added to your family. It just generates the preview based on your rules and then stores that as the preview image for the family in the Hive environment. So really depends on which way you want to leverage this. If you want your families on your network updated, use the Family Preview Manager free tool in the BIM Manager suite. If you don't, and you just want the preview standardized for Hive's purposes, just use Hive, process the content, same rule set, you're good to go. There was another question here in the window about licensing. This is a very important question. Are we planning on having some kind of SSO integration for licensing? And the answer here is across the board for all of our suites, all of our tools, yes, we're working toward that. That won't be released on May 4th, mind you, but we are working toward that with the new Hive licensing system, with Hive's logins and the licensing information being stored in the Hive. All of that will be tying into some SSO systems. That's the intent here in the near future. So yeah, our licensing will then also be SSO integrated. Will major companies, this is another question, be able to provide their content to public libraries for Hive users? Sure, sure you can. When you're building a library in the Hive ecosystem, you'll have the ability to just mark it as a public library. Now at that point, when it's a public library, it will be uploaded to the cloud, has to be cloud cached. Otherwise, other users not a part of your firm wouldn't be able to get it. But yeah, any company out there that wants to publicly host their content, you can do that. Now the key about public libraries is you no longer get to control who gets access to it. Anybody and their brother who has Hive can get access to a public library, and that's the intent. You can subscribe to it. So companies like Herman Miller or Titus or MyFob or whomever, like those companies can all get in there and make their content publicly available. Fantastic. Those of you in the building design industry, you may very well not want to do that. You probably want to explicitly share your libraries, but you'll have the ability to do so if you really want it. The cloud hosting, somebody was asking about the pricing for Hive, and this is a really big differentiator. Cloud hosting, is that included in the cost for Hive? Well, you know what? When you buy Hive, you get Hive, you get all of it. Every bit of Hive is included for Hive, all the analytics, all the cloud hosting. There's no limitations on that. You can do pretty much whatever you need. Well, there's one limitation, 200 meg file size is the maximum limit there. But you can go through and put as many files into the Hive ecosystem as you want, and that doesn't change your pricing. You buy Hive for your users, you get it for all your users with full functionality. You get to choose how it's rolled out. So that makes your pricing model for Hive very simple. It's not complex like some of the other tools out there where if you want to add a feature, it's nickel and diming you. You buy Hive, you get Hive, and that's key. There was another question here about the Hive analytics being exportable so you can use it with other tools. We do intend to have tools like Power BI and Tableau tie directly into the live Hive analytics system. But yes, there will be the ability to publish some of the data that's backing up those dashboards before that Power BI direct integration is available. Probably not at the May 4th release, but very shortly after, we do hope to have the analytic data export available for static exports. Glad you guys are all interested in Hive. This is fantastic. Will Hive, oh, and Brian, I understand that you have to jump off because you've got a webinar up and coming here in a few minutes, I believe, unless, of course, that got rescheduled. So if you have to leave.
That got rescheduled. That's no longer the case.
Oh, fantastic. We got all day then. Okay. Next one, will Hive search by name and not by relevance? There's a lot of times people want to default the sorting of searches in Hive to kind of better predict what the outcome is going to be. Relevance is the default. Of course, you can modify that to go by name on demand. We are looking at making a defaultable option user by user, so users can choose what they want their default sort order to be. By name is tricky, by the way. If HIVE is going to return back 5,000 components, we have to pull the full list of 5,000 and then filter and sort by name and present to you in different ways. There's some web technical things that makes that tricky, which is why it won't be there on release, but it is definitely something that we're looking at to be able to provide you more options for how HIVE sorts the search results. Any updates on manufacturer libraries in HIVE? Not yet. We are working with those manufacturers as the HIVE public libraries come out. We do want to have them ready to put their content into the HIVE ecosystem. One of the tool sets that is being updated right now and will be released on May 4th as well, the Mechanical Electrical Plumbing Productivity Pack, MEPPP, with a bajillion other P's in there. That particular tool, we are working with those manufacturers and with the pack itself to release it as a publicly subscribable library. So yeah, we are working with manufacturers to get their libraries publicly into HIVE and kind of helping them with that onboarding. That won't be there on release, but we hope to have it there shortly after. They have to see the benefits of public libraries before they're willing to make the commitment. So we're working with them on that. The new HIVE advancements for building, will the MEP side be able to use the content portion? Yeah, absolutely. Revit MEP right now can already benefit from HIVE, and a lot of our MEP clients are using that as we speak. So certainly the MEP industry can benefit heavily from HIVE. Now, if you are in AutoCAD MEP at this point still, and we know some of you are, that when we release the Civil 3D/AutoCAD update to HIVE, then we will be testing this as well. But the AutoCAD MEP side and the AutoCAD architecture side, technically, if that's an environment you're working in still, should also benefit in the same way. So we'll be kind of testing that pre-release as well. Does HIVE require admin permissions to install? Yes, all of our suites, every one of our suites requires admin permissions to install it, just because of how it needs to modify the system and add, an install registry to it to be able to uninstall later. That all requires an admin permission. It does not require admin permissions or power user permissions to run. It just requires those permissions to install. So yes, that is the case. We also, by the way, do have really easy install instructions that can walk your BIM managers through the exercise of silently deploying this using whatever their deployment techniques are. They can absolutely leverage this to push this out on login or via group policy Active Directory, and that's true again of all of our suites. So there was a question about the multi-version of HIVE content. Do you have to have content in each version of Revit? Well, technically you don't have to. You just have to have content that is compatible with all of the versions of Revit that you use. If you wanted to maintain your content only in one version, say 2017, that's fine. I don't know that I would personally recommend that, but that's fine. The reason I wouldn't necessarily recommend that is because when users drop that into their project, Revit's going to have to one-time upgrade it. So for the ease of use, what I typically recommend is, using our upgrade tools to, upgrade and maintain your content how you see fit, like from the BIM Manager suite to maybe add improvements for each version of Revit as you need, and then, intentionally manage that, and then just tell HIVE about that content, and it'll scan it in and read it. And I usually do that from the latest version of Revit. Just in my case, I did it in 2020 the other day for all of my earlier content. Took a little while, of course, to scan in my content, but I just let it run overnight. It wasn't a problem. Is there a limit on cloud hosting content with HIVE? No, no limitation as far as how much space you can use. That's totally up to you. We have some clients who have in the neighborhood of about 50,000 entries in HIVE. Not a problem. Go for it. Have fun. So there was a question about public libraries that will be ready on release. Will the Autodesk out-of-the-box libraries or other external resources be available on May 4th? When public libraries go live, yes, the out-of-the-box libraries from 2016 or 17 all the way through the latest version of 2021 will be available in a public Autodesk library that will be sponsoring, hosting, maintaining in Imperial and in Metric. So we'll be trying to get both of those up there as public libraries. You can subscribe to one, the other, or both. We're going to try to make that happen by May 4th. I can't guarantee it's going to, because public libraries might not be available on May 4th officially. Can families or details be harvested from container files? You know what? Right now, you can harvest details, typical drafting views, model groups, detail groups, other stuff directly from container files. Yes, absolutely. Families themselves, we recommend you pull that directly from the original RFAs on your network. But everything else that's project hosted, that has to be project hosted, we have techniques and ways that you can harvest that directly from the container file using HIVE. So absolutely. If you want to know more about that and want to see exactly how that functions, I encourage you to get a hold of ATG or us directly if you're not an ATG client, or I should say if you're outside of the US and you're asking this, say, from Canada or from other places in the world, get a hold of us directly. If you're asking this question and you're in the US, get a hold of ATG, and we'll get you set up with a demonstration to show you exactly how HIVE works, what kind of content, and we'll even give you recommendations on how to structure that to make your life easy for onboarding. So there was a question about HIVE searching. Can you have options for seeing underscores as spaces? There's a lot of times where they appear to not be returning proper results because of how your files are named. If you would do me a favor and contact me offline about that. I don't know who this is. It was an anonymous attendee who asked that question. But if you would contact me offline, I want to know more about that. HIVE right now should already be doing that. And so if you're not experiencing that, we need to take a look at that and figure that out with you. So in the future, will HIVE update family versions automatically? Yeah, we're looking at how that can happen. We do want to offer that as a feature. For now, it is intentional BIM management that we promote, but with the ongoing requests to have families upgrade automatically, we are looking at solutions for how that can happen. It's tricky licensing wise. It's tricky using some of the online services Autodesk has given us just because of how they bill. But that's a service that we may offer in the future to go alongside of HIVE. We don't know what that looks like exactly yet, but it's definitely on our wish list. It's definitely near the top of our wish list. We're just trying to figure out exactly how the best way to go about that is. For HIVE filtering, is there any options in the works for and filtering, say when you select multiple tags? Yes, there are options. We are looking at ways of making that a possibility. It's tricky for the user interface to make it clear what's happening, so we are investigating different ways of making that happen. Again, I encourage you to contact us, and if you've got wishes like that, you know, throw us some ideas like, hey, I'd like to see it this way, or we feel this would work well for our users. And we would love to kind of get that feedback from you. So don't be shy. As I mentioned very early on in today's presentation, we are all about your feedback to us to help us kind of develop these tools and build it for what the industry needs. So shoot us ideas. We're all about it. Asking for features is one thing, but if you can propose a way of doing that in a clean way for the end users, we would love that as well, kind of to get the different ideas from you know, different companies out there that need that kind of functionality. The final question that I have in the queue right now from HIVE is there any reason to retire old versions of content, basically to increase search space or increase search speed rather? I mean, yeah, if there's content that you're not going to be using that you don't expect to be relevant for users, absolutely there is a reason, a logic behind cleaning up that older content, especially things like 2016 content that, you know, if you're not using 2016 anymore in the firm or 2017, should that content go away? For your own search speed, absolutely. No sense in carrying dead weight around. So I would say for sure, clean that up. The individual who asked that, if you want to know more about how that happens, we can do a web call on that, and I'll show you explicitly how, for your firm, you can go through the exercise of culling that old content. I'm not seeing any more questions on the building side roll through. Brian, did you see any questions from civil that maybe I skipped over accidentally?
I don't. We got through all the questions, but everyone's still on. Feel free to type any other questions you might have into the system. We'll address them here for you guys, or you can always contact us, of course, with any questions you might have. So we'll hang on for just another minute here, see if any other questions come in. Otherwise, we thank everyone for joining us today, and this has been great. We always love sharing what we're up to, the new products, the new solutions we have out there. Hope everyone stays safe and continues to work as we go through this challenging time. All of us at CTC, we are all working from home, have been for weeks. We understand where everyone's at. We're not seeing any other questions come in, so thanks again, everyone. We wish you a wonderful day, and we will talk soon. Goodbye.
Have a fantastic day, guys.